A CBS News exclusive report tonight of a new and controversial role for the U.S. military in the fight against international drug and violence pushers. CBS News has learned that the Defense Department has plans to apprehend, some would say kidnap, drug criminals abroad who are fugitives from U.S. justice. It has not been revealed yet whether President Bush has given his personal go-ahead. Defense Department correspondent David Martin has been working this story for weeks and breaks the details.
The Pentagon has authorized military units to join the effort to capture drug lords and bring them to the U.S. to stand trial. Among the units to be used, the Delta Hostage Rescue Team. Late last summer, an informant reported that Pablo Escobar, one of the kingpins of the Colombian drug trade, was hiding out at a seaside villa in Panama. Defense Secretary Cheney ordered troops and helicopters moved to an American base in Puerto Rico in preparation for an attempt to seize Escobar over the Labor Day weekend. Drug lords are well guarded, and officials warned Cheney that American soldiers could be killed.
The operation was scrubbed because the informant's tip was given only a 70% chance of being correct. It turned out Escobar was not even in Panama. But officials say Cheney's eagerness to go after Escobar has spurred other government agencies to become more aggressive in attempting to capture fugitive drug lords.
Earlier this week, Luis Arce Gomez, once known as Bolivia's Minister of Cocaine, was captured and brought to the U.S. by a team of Bolivian police and agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration. And Bush administration officials recently asserted the legal right to go beyond law enforcement and actually launch military strikes against the drug cartels.
There have been a recent statement by one drug syndicate which said that they would come over here and kill Americans systematically, including government officials. If someone makes that kind of an assertion, I'm going to have to tell my officials, well, you know, you can treat this as an attack. You might be able to exercise force in self-defense.
There's the obvious possibility that a military operation could result in killing a drug lord. But officials say that would not violate the ban against assassinations. It would just be a case of a fugitive resisting arrest. Dan?
David, would or would not this sending troops into a likely combat situation trigger the War Powers Act?
Well, yes, it would, and in the case of Escobar, administration officials were prepared to brief Congress under the terms of the War Powers Act, which, as you said, requires congressional notification whenever U.S. forces go into a situation where combat is likely.
David Martin, thanks. While the U.S. military is apparently targeting Escobar, a leader of the Colombian drug thug outfit headquartered in Medellin, there is another huge cocaine and crime pipeline out of Colombia. CBS News correspondent Richard Schlesinger has been investigating the cocaine criminals of Cali.
In the Colombian city of Cali, a quiet band of drug dealers has made billions, selling cocaine in lucrative markets like New York, staying out of the headlines until the Colombian government's crackdown made them wanted men.
The
narco traffickers of Medellin have confronted the government more forcefully, and that's the difference. The narcos here have kept on with the business, but have tried to avoid any confrontations with the government.
The Cali drug lords have the same trappings of wealth as their Medellin counterparts. When one of the drug dealers here tried to join a local country club, he was turned down because of his background. So he took his money and built his own, an almost exact replica of the club that turned him down. Their houses are opulent cocaine castles. Until the crackdown, Miguel Rodriguez, one of the leaders of the Cali cartel, lived like a king, operating out of a modern office complete with a paper shredder. He and his brother are on the so-called Dirty Dozen list of cocaine barons wanted by the United States. Their whereabouts, unknown. Since the government declared war on the drug lords, the Cali gang has left the same calling card as the more vicious Medellin cartel. In September, 15 bombs went off here in 2 nights. But security officials say they have to set priorities, and the government has concentrated its attention on the Medellin kings.
They are the ones that have caused the greatest harm to the people of Colombia, to the Colombian institutions.
But authorities in Cali know that even if the leaders of the Medellin cartel are captured or killed, the Cali drug lords are ready and more than willing to take up the slack. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, Cali, Colombia.
Still, good evening. Colombian drug and violence pushers are being blamed for one of the deadliest bomb attacks ever in Bogota. A truck crammed with explosives went off today outside headquarters for Colombia's Security and Intelligence Agency. At least 35 people are dead, at least 250 people seriously wounded, hundreds of others needing treatment for cuts and shock for blocks around. CBS News correspondent Doug Tennell is on the scene in bomb-shocked Bogota.
The bomb was hidden in a bus that was driving past what was considered one of the safest places in Bogota, the headquarters compound of Colombia's Intelligence and Security Police. 1,000 pounds of plastic explosive exploded right on the doorstep of the agency leading Colombia's cocaine war, just as shops and offices were opening for business. Buildings within a 3-block radius sustained heavy damage. The blast left a crater over 30 feet wide in the concrete. Streets and squares nearby had been filled with people walking to work. Rescue workers were so overwhelmed by the numbers of dead and injured that police appealed for volunteers to come to the scene with picks and shovels and lend a helping hand. The security police building was damaged all the way up to the 9th floor, but the real target appears to be Colombia's resolve in prosecuting the cocaine war. Colombia's Minister of Government, Carlos Lemos, called it a crime against all Colombians today, and he urged the country to unite against the drug cartels. Only yesterday, Colombians received confirmation of what many had most feared, that the explosion last month on board a Colombian passenger jet in which 107 persons perished was a terrorist bomb, probably the work of the drug cartels. Today's attack was every bit as anonymous and indiscriminate. It was the worst bombing in Colombia's recent history. This part of the city looked more like Beirut than Bogota today. In the last 24 hours, the phrase narco-terrorism has taken on a whole new and terrible meaning here. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Bogota.
Bank accounts belonging to one of Colombia's leading drug thugs were ordered frozen in 5 countries today, tying up almost $62 million, some of it in the United States. From Washington, D.C., correspondent Deborah Potter reports on the cash that was seized from a suspect still free and still not hurting for cash.
The target of the unprecedented seize and freeze operation was Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, a key figure in the notorious Medellin cocaine cartel.
Y Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha.
Financial records turned up 2 months ago in raids by Colombian police led authorities to more than $60 million worth of his personal stash.
He was investing in any high-yield stocks, the equivalent of RCDs, anything that would pay a high yield.
Rodriguez Gacha's funds have now been frozen by banks in 5 countries: Luxembourg, Switzerland, Austria, Britain, and the United States.
He has been shorn of substantial assets. This, I am sure, is a message not lost on his counterparts around the world.
But Rodriguez Gacha is far from broke. As authorities closed in on his accounts, he salvaged $20 million by sending it to Panama. And independent observers say what Rodriguez Gacha lost won't hurt him much.
Here's a man that is said to have a personal fortune in excess of $1 billion. So this will not make a very sizable dent in his personal fortune or in his ability to operate within Colombia.
But seizing assets is as close as the government's managed to get to any of its 12 most wanted Colombian drug lords. All of the so-called dirty dozen, including Rodriguez Gacha, are still at large and still in business. Deborah Potter, CBS News, Washington.